Now it's time for you to start hustling and churning out those evaluations as fast as you can. Some evaluations are not so bad. You can do an articulation evaluation pretty quickly. Some evaluations, when you see, oh, buddy, I got a pragmatic language evaluation, they take a lot longer. When I see one of those roll across my desk, at first, I'm like, I don't want to do this. It's going to take so much time. But then I'm like, okay, no, Jess, you've got a plan. You have a really good system for pragmatic language evaluations. Let's do this and let's do a great job. So here is my plan. I'm going to share it with you today, how to do the best pragmatic language evaluation. When we're doing evaluations, we need to consider multiple sources. And I know a lot of districts will make you use, and insurance or whoever will make you have a standardized assessment, or something that is norm based or whatever. In my personal experience, I've never loved those. I will give them when I have to, but because it has to be so rigid with the way you administer them, like sometimes it's just not helpful. So I created my own informal pragmatic language assessment. So I'm going to kind of tell you today, break that down and tell you what all the components of it are and tell you where you can find it if this sounds like something that would be helpful to you. So like I said, we want to consider a bunch of different input from a bunch of different places. So we have maybe our standardized assessment. We also want to make sure we're getting input from the teachers and from the parents. So I always make sure that I hand out a caregiver and a teacher survey. And I actually do this as a rating scale. For a while, I did it as like a yes, no, and then teachers would be like, well, it's kind of in the middle. So now I do a rating scale, and the rating scale is from 1, never, to 5, always. And I even have an NS for not sure, because a lot of times people will be like, well, I don't know. That's fine. Just tell me you don't know. We'll work with it. So I have created this rating scale. I give it to the caregivers, and I also give it to the teachers just to get some input on, okay, here's what Johnny is doing at school in his academic environment, and here's what he's doing at home in his home environment. And just a side note, I will often tell parents, like, they'll see these comparisons, or teachers will see these comparisons and be kind of snarky to parents. And they're like, he's not doing that in my classroom. Or, the parent at home is like, well, he's doing so much better at home. And I will say, yeah, that's really common. We see that all the time. That's why I like to send it out to both the parents and the teachers, so that I can see what he's doing at his home environment and what he's doing at his school environment. And then I use my clinical judgment from there as I finish the evaluation, and I just kind of take note of everything. So, first step of a pragmatic language evaluation is getting the input from the parents and the teachers. Because I'm looking at pragmatics on this rating scale, I have nonverbal communication, I have conversation skills, I have play skills, I have do they use things like greetings and farewells and things like that to, again, give me an idea of what the student is doing in different environments. After I have sent out the parent and teacher surveys, I then get ready to do an informal observation of the child myself. Usually I like to do a classroom observation first. And the reason for that is because I can kind of start, behind the scenes, off to the side, and the student can kind of like, oh, see me and know that, like, I'm a safe person. And then I'll slowly, interact with the student, start playing with them. Usually I'll try to come during centers or some sort of less structured time, so that I can observe the child playing as naturally and being as social as possible. So when I do that, I will bring my social communication evaluation checklist with me. It is about 5 pages. I have spent years perfecting this, and I am looking for each of the areas of pragmatic language that ASHA has outlined. So if you didn't know, ASHA considers pragmatic language to have these 5 kind of subcomponents. So we have uses of language, We have storytelling and narratives. I also look at play skills and then conversation skills. And we have things like nonverbal communication. Those are the areas that I am watching. And like I said, I start in the classroom. I bring my checklist with me on my clipboard and I just start watching the child. And if I see him or her do something, then I just write an example right here in the line. As for the storytelling and narratives, I watch really hard for this. These go in order of difficulty. So, are they recounting previous experiences? Do they narrate their play? Do they tell previous events without being prompted? Do they make up pretend stories? Are their stories in order? So, just kind of an idea of these are the things I'm looking for. But I also am watching play skills, again, developmentally appropriate play skills, all listed right here on my checklist because I ain't going to remember that. And you're probably not either. So let's have it written down for us. I have conversation skills. Do they initiate a conversation? Do they respond? Do they stay on topic? Do they ask questions? All of these things we're looking for so that I don't forget when I'm watching what I'm looking for and I make sure I touch on everything. After I do the classroom observation, once I feel like the student is comfortable with me, I will then take them to my speech room and I will do a like a one-on-one kind of play-based evaluation, sort of digging for some of those things I did not get in the classroom observation. So I will probably contrive some scenarios, try to make some things happen the way I want them to. Particularly those storytelling ones can be a little tricky, or even some of the conversation ones. So again, this guides me in my informal observation section. And it is extremely helpful. And I write the examples down and then I put those specific examples in my report so that I know and I can tell mom, hey, here's what I meant when I said he's not doing this. So, first one is surveys, second one is informal observation. Now, we also know that nonverbal communication is a struggle for children with pragmatic language difficulties. So I spend a lot of time focusing on nonverbal communication. And I do that because nonverbal communication ties into a lot of different areas. Communication, like understanding a facial expression or perspective. And we need to use that theory of mind to understand what they might be thinking. So never, ever, ever skip the nonverbal communication portion of an informal pragmatic evaluation. And the way I did that, so I made sure I did a good job, is I found 11 real pictures of real people, not cartoons, not clip art, not drawings, real pictures that display these kind of 11 most common, most important to understand emotions. So I have the student look at the picture. So number one, we go from easy to hardest. So we have happy, and it's a picture of somebody happy. But they don't have to just tell me that the little girl is happy. No. I want to get more information from this evaluation. So they tell me, how does the little girl feel? Now they're going to tell me, what is she doing that lets you know she feels that way? Well, that's when they would say, she's smiling, her hands are raised, something like that. They're explaining the body language, the nonverbal communication that is paired with that emotion. And then I want to know, what is something the girl might be thinking? So now we're taking that theory of mind, perspective taking kind of, role here. And I find a lot of times children really struggle with this. So they can look at the picture and it's a picture of like a little girl and her mom. And, she might be thinking something like, I love my mom. I'm having fun playing with my mom. But most of the times I'll have children be like, I forgot. I don't know. It really is helpful for kind of getting into the mind of your students. And then finally, I want to know tell me about a time you felt happy. So we do this for all of the 11. So we have happy, angry, mad, surprised, worried, disgust, jealous, lonely, a whole bunch of different emotions, all with real pictures. And I spend a lot of time going over that to make sure I'm really understanding how my student is perceiving nonverbal communication, emotions, and perspective taking, because that's where a lot of really good goals can come in. So don't skip that part. After I do nonverbal communication, I'm going to look at narratives, because narratives and storytelling are another huge part of social communication delays and disorders. And I want to make sure I'm doing them justice. So I used to really struggle with narratives, storytelling, and how to evaluate them. And they just seemed like so abstract to me. So I watched in the ASHA Learning Pass, I watched a training on narratives, and it kind of gave me a better understanding of the development of them and what I need to be looking for when I'm evaluating them. So let's go in order from easiest to hardest. So are they able to retell factual events when prompted? So I might say, tell me how you got ready for school this morning, or tell me how you get ready for bed. So this is very much a sequencing kind of goal. Tell me how you wash your hands. Can they tell me these factual things in order? That is the very basic foundation of storytelling, which I did not know for a long time. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that, but I know now. So I'm going to share it with everybody. That's why we target sequencing. That's why sequencing is so important. It is the foundation of storytelling skills. So if our student can't do that, we really need to be focusing on that to work on those pragmatic language storytelling skills. Now, we also want to work on event casting, or evaluate event casting. So that is, are we describing ongoing activities? So this might look like, a child is playing with a doll and they're just kind of like, oh, my baby's eating, my baby's drinking, I need to change my baby's diaper, it's poopy, whatever. That's event casting. That's the next step. And then we have accounting. So this is unprompted accounts of previous experiences. This is what I used to think was the first step of storytelling. So that would be, when a child would just come up and tell me about their day. Or, my personal kids are at camp right now. And so we get in the car, I pick them up and they get in the car and they start telling me all the things they did at camp. That is a higher level storytelling skill than sequencing familiar routines. Right here, number 3 of 4. So if you really struggle with knowing the order of storytelling and narrative skills, this checklist is going to be really helpful for you as well. And then finally, usually during play, is looking at made up stories. So this is, maybe as they're getting older and they're supposed to write a story, a made up pretend story. That is the highest level storytelling skill. Obviously, that can get even more complex as they get older. What a kindergartner is expected to do is very different than what a high schooler is expected to do. You know this. But in my informal pragmatic language evaluation, I have this exact form so that you know exactly which stage your child is at developmentally, or your student is at developmentally, for knowing where to help them with goal writing. So you can already see, like, between the nonverbal communication and the storytelling, you have such a good place to start digging for goals that are going to be really helpful and concrete for your student. And sometimes I feel like pragmatic goals are like way up here, and it's like, oh, how do I take data on this? How do I even begin to target it? But this is going to help you break it down really simply. In that same vein of thought, we have conversation skills. So we've looked at narrative and storytelling. We've looked at nonverbal communication. I really want to dig into conversation skills as well in my evaluation. So same type of thing. In my evaluation, I start with, okay, here's level 1. This is a student-led conversation. So I'm letting the student talk about whatever they want to talk about. Do they want to talk about special interests? Do they want to talk about whatever? Do they talk about nothing? Maybe we just sit and stare at each other. I don't know. Then that's what we're going to do. So level 1 is student-led. I'm going to see, do they stay on topic? Do they ask me questions? Do they add comments? Do they use nonverbal communication, like eye contact, appropriately? And do they end it or change topics appropriately? This is what I'm looking for. Level 2 is the informational level. So in this level, I'm going to ask the student questions about his or her life. So what will you do after school? And I'm going to see these same things. Do they stay on topic? Do they ask questions? So do they add comments? Do they use nonverbal communication? You can see that the skill I've asked has gotten a little bit more difficult. At first, student had full control. Now I'm directing the prompt about something they should know. It should be relatively easy for them to talk about, unless they have a pragmatic language, delay or disorder, in which case I'm about to get some really important information. And then level 3 is going to be opinions. So that's where I used to start conversational prompts, would just be like, oh, tell me what's your favorite ice cream or whatever. But that's an opinion, that's not a fact. And so it's actually a little bit of a harder skill than that factual thing we just talked about. So, they're still talking about things they know, they're talking about things they like. It's just one notch harder than where we have been. And then finally, level 4 for when I'm evaluating conversation skills is evaluator led. And this is one where I purposely talk about things I know the child has no interest in. Maybe I'm talking about what I'm cooking for dinner. Maybe I'm talking about my kids. I'm talking about me. And I am now challenging the student to be interested in a conversation that I'm leading about myself. That's really, really tricky. This is going to give you a lot of information as well. Does the student change the topic to a special interest? Do they even care? Do they listen? Do they ask questions? It really is quite challenging. And when you think about it in this evaluating and this scaffolded approach, it really is fascinating to really break down, okay, where is my student in this hierarchy? Where do I need to write my goals? And where do I need to start speech therapy so that I can really help my student? And that's why I created this informal pragmatic evaluation, because as you can see, you're getting so much more information, helpful information that you're not going to get from a standardized assessment. And it's helpful information for you, and it's helpful information for the parents as well. So if you want a copy of this, it is in my TPT store. I just redid this in the past year. So it's even better. Like, this is the updated version. It was good before, but now this is like way better. I've used it personally this year and have found it helpful. My caregivers that I work with found it helpful. I really cannot talk this up enough. So it's in my TPT store. And when I recreated this, I also have developmental norms for pragmatic language, and they're in little handouts. You can buy the bundle together, and you can show the caregivers, okay, here's the developmental norms for storytelling skills. Here's the developmental norms for nonverbal communication. So, so helpful just to have them in one place to hand out and to help caregivers and teachers understand this extremely complicated topic. So again, if you want to find it, it's in my TPT store. I will link it in the description. I am the gift of gab on TPT. I would love to help you out with your informal pragmatic language evaluations this year. Hop on over and grab that so you can have it now at the beginning of the school year and not be regretting it all school year. Have a great school year, and I will see you again real soon.